What up, familia? It's your favorite Puerto Rican, Brooklyn, Philly, and I'm back with another message. This is like take 3. I'm gonna keep it straight up 100. It's been quite the roller coaster of emotions today. And yes, but without further ado, I'm gonna jump right in. The first thing I heard was to relay a channeled message that was actually channeled on November 6th, but is relevant today. So let's go. The message for that day was honor endings as rites of passage. Again, I'm going to repeat that, honor endings as rites of passage. And then I heard strong enough to go through these in between stages. You are strong enough to go through these in between stages. And the in between stages from when you're closing out one level, one cycle, maybe one pattern, one thought system, one belief system, and you're stepping into the new one, right? You're possibly still grieving or struggling with leaving the old behind. Excited and maybe in anticipation of the new and what it can bring forward. However, it's still is trepidatious, right? Because you're not quite sure of what to expect, right? Although the old, I'm hearing, is dead and gone, and you want to shed it and let it go, it still is comfortable. It's still something that is known. And when you're in between this known and unknown stage, right? That's the in between stage that they're saying you're strong enough to go through it, right? So it's like a bridge. You're called to transform. Um, Stop holding on to roles you outgrew due to comfort. Um, why not? I'm hearing. Then is I thrive at the crossroads. My inner child thrives at the crossroads. And then I wrote Elegua. If you know, you know. Elegua is from Yoruba or Santeria, depending on, yeah, and is known as the child, right? Or having a very childlike essence. Um, and is the keeper of the crossroads, right? At the crossroads. Now I'm hearing Bone Thugs and Harmony, meet me at the crossroads. And then with I wrote old versus new, this in between stages. I heard nice and smooth from this song. This is how we take the old to the new. So maybe those two songs are relevant if you listen to them. Yes, confirmation. They might have more meaning for you in it. Now, what was interesting is that when I tried to kind of get a meaning or a sentiment behind nice and smooth, this is how we take the old to the new. Something I've never come across is that when you try to search for on the internet that, well, what's the meaning of that song? They said that the lyrics in and of themselves doesn't give like a consensus of what it really means. You know, Nice does his verse, Smooth does his. What they did emphasize was on their style of rap, coming from the Bronx, and how they influenced the rap game with their music. They called it a clean cut, fresh style. But it didn't, usually when you look up a song's meaning, it'll give you maybe what the artist had to say about it, or you can get a general, and that wasn't what I encountered with this song. So why would that be significant? I don't know. There's something in, I just heard leaving it up for interpretation as opposed to someone giving you the interpretation, which would then lead to what they begin to talk about, which was validation. They mentioned Lilith. Lilith, if you don't know, Lilith is, according to some mythological accounts, the first wife of Adam, not Eve. Eve came after Lilith. Then there, as of right this very moment, get away. This is what the channel message says. Pressurized work. Say no to pressurized work. Say no to hostile environments. Say no to unregulated nervous systems. Say no to unsupported environments and people. Say no to seeking validation, or no, and say yes to self validation and people. Say yes to environments uh, uh, and people who validate you and who mirror your feelings back to you, right? As opposed to dismiss them. Uh, and then it says, the next part of the message is blockages to consider while in this in between stages, or maybe what becomes difficult in this transition is looking for external validation regarding quote unquote success, quote unquote career, right? Who determines what success looks like to you, or what you deem as success, right? Are you going based on a societal standard, a familial standard, right? Does it come with a title, a degree, a specific set of money, right? And if you're looking for those things to validate you, then you're saying the money, the title, the degree is what gives you worth. Well, I thought what gave you worth was your very existence. I thought you were already born with your worth. So, yeah, something to contemplate. Holds up enjoying my successes, looking for I see you, right? So maybe part of the blockage or letting go, maybe you're comfortable at a job, maybe that job comes with a specific title, a specific reputation. So if you let it go, then who are you, right? Are you still successful? Will you still be seen, right? And I'm hearing like, so when we get into the whole, Black excellence, or even the soft girl era, right? So I'm a soft girl if I have the designer bags, if I'm sitting in luxury spas, if I'm eating at 5-star Michelin restaurants. That equating? But or is that then just still feeding into capitalism and consumerism, and then calling it soft girl era? And then some of us, to obtain that soft girl era, what is the expense, right? At whose expense? At what expense, right? Because if you're saying, well, no, I'm an independent woman, I get it on my own, which is wonderful, but how much of a grind do you have to grind to be able to get those luxury items, right? And live that luxury lifestyle. Now, if that's what makes you truly happy, and you don't get stressed out, and your nervous system is regulated, and you don't feel like you're under pressurized work, then fine, no problem. But I'm speaking to those of us who feel that pressurized work, are in hostile environments, nervous system is unregulated, are in environments that are unsupportive, and around people, even if it's family members who are unsupportive. So how's that working for you, right? And the expense of staying at that job, even for the money, right? Does it equate your health? Does it equate your mental health, right? Your physical health? Because the body keeps score, right? And all that you repress eventually is going to seep out somehow in aches, pains, and unfortunately, knock on wood, diseases, right? Then it says, gave the example of Leah versus Rachel. Leah in the Bible and Rachel were two sisters. Their father was Laban, and Jacob was one of the patriarchs in the Bible, right? He was Esau's brother. And he stole Esau's inheritance. Well, Esau sold him his inheritance for a bowl of soup, right? So I'm hearing sibling rivalry, and that was toxic, right? Because they were still brothers. So for him to, I'm hearing bamboozle his own brother out of his inheritance, utilizing the fact that he was hungry, right? So then again, even in familial structures, right? Not everybody's familial structure is supportive. It can be, for many of us, we've experienced familial environments, even at the hands of parents and siblings, that are very destructive and very abusive and very counterproductive to what we would want to fantasize or even uh, crave in like siblings or parental figures, right? Um, I've been coming across a lot of women, even black and brown women, women of color, who uh, are coaching or, conducting retreats. But these retreat, and this is no tea, no shade towards them, but they do have a specific audience, right? And not to say that, there are some who I've heard that they, put together funds and they do sponsor a woman, to go to a retreat or something like, which is wonderful. Excuse me, confirmation. But the reality is that there's so many women out here, and men too, but again, there's something around the women, and particularly the women of color, who don't have that family support, are estranged from even people like their parents in their family. Some of the women that I've been listening to, they even in their 50s say, I still, or, on this road to becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a traveler, taking a gap year, a sabbatical year around the world, bouncing around the world, have admitted that most of them have been educated enough to have had at least income, right? Good enough, stabilized income. Also have come with a lot of them come with familial support, right? I heard a lot of them in their interviews say, well, I knew that I could stay with my mom, or I could stay with this specific family member. So if I had to go back to work, it was okay. I knew I was never really in danger of being homeless. And that isn't the case for whoever I'm speaking to right now. That's what Spirit is saying. I get you now, God. Okay. Because those of you who are listening to the sound of my voice, your concern in this transition is very real. It's triggering, I'm hearing, it's triggering wounds, right? Wounds of and anxiety. So I'm speaking to people who maybe have experienced homelessness in the past, maybe have come from for lack of better wording right now, toxic environments, familial environments. So, and or as a result, right, have been, wow, that's a lot of confirmation, have been subjected to, in order to survive, to obtain resources from, by utilizing, cash assistance and food stamps and maybe Section 8. So when a lot of these coaches online and or influencers are throwing even these retreats, even in other countries, and although the retreat may cost the individual between flight and everything $1,000, they're being thrown in places like East Asia and South America, and then these places are, the dollar is significantly higher, the US dollar, right? They get you get more of a bang for your buck. But the cost for the woman who is in the US, she still has to pay that. She still has to pay that $700, $800, $900,000 for that retreat. And that may seem very minimal a cost for someone who, maybe even makes $3,000 a month, right? And typically is geared towards older women or very younger women who may not be in that middle stage where they're still wives or mothers. And I mean, most of them are, I wanted to say, maybe out of ignorance, lucky to be wives. And the only reason why I say that is because usually the stereotype or the inference is that, well, if she's partnered up, then there's two incomes in the household, but that's not necessarily true either. So again, that's not to bash anyone or to say or negate that those kind of systems aren't necessary, or programs or retreats, or however, it does exclude, or is not, not exclude, right? Is not geared. It doesn't, is not accessible. There you go. Thank you, Spirit. To women who, are living off of $316 a month, $297 a month if they're on welfare, cash assistance, and they have 2 children, right? $497 a month, I think, if you have 3 children. Food stamps, and with the cost of living, how that's going up, as well as, milk is $7 a gallon, eggs is $5. How could she take a gap year? How could she even afford a week at a hotel? Right? Let alone, think of maybe even becoming an expat somewhere when, she doesn't have retirement. She's been on welfare most of her life, on and off of under the table jobs, literally, making $1 out of 15 cents, but still very much, and some would say even in more of a desperate need to get some kind of rest, right? If we're talking about the women of color, particularly the Black woman being the mule, the workhorse, how does that one, get out of that race? I'm sorry, my throat is locking up because that shit real, man. And in order to, the reality is, in order for maybe some of us to enjoy that, we do have to a certain extent, turn our face away from those who are in that condition. What do I mean by that? Because if you're just barely, I just heard keeping your head above water, making a way where you can, right? Temporary layoff, good time. Like if you're part of that good times, working class that is trying to just keep your head above water, and you trying to get a vacation in at least 2 weeks, whatever, you can't really afford that gap year, right? And you have a degree, possibly, right? Then how then does the sister, that's in terms of, we're looking at classism under that tier, that maybe works and is only getting $10 an hour at the job, maybe working 10-hour shifts, coming home, helping with homework, helping putting food on the table. Where can she, even to try to get her an Airbnb is a whole nother situation. And I'm 20 minutes in. I don't know. Maybe half of you already clicked off, or maybe some ain't even click on. I don't know. But it becomes very disheartening, right? And then to add to the mix, the fact that not only are we looking at it from an economical standpoint and then even class, social system, right? I'm not a part of that Black excellence. I don't come from parents and grandparents who, were in college and went to, Morehouse and Clark, and that's not my background, right? I'm hearing, some women say, and then, mine's came from the school of hard knocks, and possibly my grandfather, my great grandfather and grandmother struggled with mental health and alcoholism. My grandfather, and grandmother, they struggled with it, and now my parents struggled with it, and I even struggled with it most of my life, and now I'm just trying to turn this vicious cycle around so that my children don't struggle with that. Recognizing and understanding that not only am I trying to turn that around, but even in the trying right now, they're going back to this in between stage. I still hold some of these tendencies that are still going to be shown to my children, and also I'm still going to be subjected to a specific environment until I can move us out, depending on the neighborhood, the money, the increase, to add to the mix, um, that as a result of maybe such traumatic backgrounds and such struggle, so now I'm struggling with insecurity. So I'm looking for external validation. And again, this would go for either woman, right? A woman who maybe has more of an educational, that because she believes her external validation, the fact that she got this degree or this job or whatever, that's what gives her her worth, down to the sister who's struggling on food stamps, or, she's struggling. She thinks she has no self-worth because she's probably on that program. So now we have these women who are struggling with this, struggling with defining what success means, right? Or am I defining it based on capitalism and consumerism? Am I defining it based on Black excellence? Am I defining it based on my familial or community standards, right? When it should be defined as to what do I feel, right? What would success look like for me, which would mean very different things to very many different people. However, we want to use a cookie cutter approach and stick it to everybody, and that becomes more harmful and more detrimental because it just is impossible. It's not going to be the same for everyone. We can have certain barometers, I'm hearing, or perimeters, but it still needs to look different for everybody, right? It's kind of like the soft girl era. So for one, the soft girl era is I'm going to spas, I'm jumping in and out of limos, I'm at Michelin 5 restaurants, and I'm, at the latest cafe and shopping at Louis. You know what I mean? Whereas for someone else, the soft girl era may mean, I'm not punching into a clock. I don't have to run around all day, at a job or under a supervisor that is disrespectful, condescending, right? Or under a partner who dictates my every move because they provide the finances, right? The soft girl era can look very different. Soft girl era can mean, I'm retired and now I go to the local Y to swim on like a $10 pass class. I take chair yoga free at the public library, and I do Tai Chi classes on, free Tai Chi at the local park on Wednesdays and Saturday mornings, right? And that's my soft girl era. But we won't know that if we're not checking in with ourselves, we're not trying to define it for ourselves, and so on and so forth. So, Rachel and Leah were two sisters. Um, Leah was known to be not as pretty as Rachel, according to the Bible. So she had definitely some insecurity issues. Uh, we read about it because we hear that every time she gave Jacob a child, is now he hears me, now he sees me, now he, right, is always looking for this external validation. Um, uh, and I wrote here, so you're not the favorite in quotations, and it says, all I want for this person is to acknowledge me. In her case, in Leah's case, it was her father, then her husband, because Jacob did marry her, but not because he wanted to, but because she was the eldest daughter. Then I was reminded of the color purple. There was this whole Celie versus Nettie. We saw that compare and contrast there. One not being as pretty as the other. One saying, I don't know how to fight, right? I just know how to survive. And Nettie saying, no, I'm going to fight, right? Um, uh, One subject to rape and impregnation as early as, like, I think 13, 14. The other one didn't stay around long enough to, so it's like the older sister took the trauma for the younger sister. Hope I'm explaining that correctly. Understanding, knowing you're enough, don't have to be like other, actually gives you freedom. So for those women who possibly, and men who struggled with, well, this was the favorite child, or this is the favorite wife, or this is the favorite, because even in today's society, it might not be that there's two wives, but maybe there's one father and three baby mothers. And then it's clear and evident that one baby mother and her children may be the favorite to him or to even to his family, right? But there was something where Spirit was saying that understanding that knowing you're enough is what is important. You don't have to be like the other wife that is quote unquote the favorite, or the sister, or your brother, or the colleague at your job. Because what they were saying was that the fact that you're not the favorite to that entity, to that husband or wife, to that family structure, to that boss or whoever it is, actually gives you freedom. And I'm like, huh? Yeah, the favorite carries a burden in the connection, right? Because the only reason they're the favorite is because they have to look a certain way, act a certain way, behave a certain way, right? That's what makes them the favorite. In, I wrote here, with the King of Pentacles. And then I wrote, died on top of me. That's in relationship to there's a scene in Color Purple where when Celie goes back and finds out that the man who impregnated her with her first two children, who she thought was her father, wasn't really her father. She asked the young girl he had married next, how did he die? And she said, he died on top of me, right? So there was something about, yeah, she was, she became his next favorite, but he was so old he died on top of her. I don't know. I apologize. That one was, it made sense to me when on 11-6. Maybe it'll hit you in a different way. But that there's a codependent relationship in those relationships with the so-called favorite. Because it says, I must be or act in certain way based on desires of the King of Pentacles. So I'm either for example, as a trophy wife, comes with a cost, right? And then it was housewives and reality shows. You can see it in there, right? That behavior, not for all housewives or reality shows, but I'm just saying, you see the cost in when they're like showing you, right, what many of them have had to endure to be the wives of like these celebrities or these. So there's no freedom. There's always this sense of attention on them. The men are usually like these clout chasers, right? They want to, brag and have the baddest joint on their arm at the time, and then when you're no longer fitting that criteria, you're no longer the favorite, you're cast out. And then they took me to King Xerxes and Vashti in the Bible. Vashti was Esther's predecessor, right? Queen Esther's from the Bible. So Vashti was called by the king to come, and some say that she was supposed to be paraded in front of his bulls, in front of his, homies that night, and she refused to. Some say she was even asked to parade naked before them, some accounts, and she refused to, and because she refused to, she was cast out, right? Same thing with Lilith and Adam. It is said that she wanted to be his equal, and because of that, that's why. And when Adam wanted her to submit to him as opposed to being his equal, that's when she left the garden, right? And then that's when Eve was created out of his rib, and no disrespect, but I heard build a bitch, right? Not calling Eve or Adam or anybody, but this is what I heard. So there's really no freedom in that. You're not really free. Like Lilith is free, even though she's cast out the garden, she's free. Vashti, although she's cast out, she's free. There's a sense of freedom in being cast out. Again, perspective, right? And then it's saying, so Eve and Esther and Sarai, which was Abraham's first wife, and Rachel, which was Jacob's second wife, and Sarai is Sarah, because Hagar was his other wife, right? But Hagar was free. But Sarah, Esther, Eve, and Rachel, they trade freedom for attention, the attention that was on that set ways they have to conduct themselves or do things. It's not true. Is it truly I wrote here, it's not truly enjoyable. Even sexual freedom is or can be limited. Traditional wife roles. Celebrate yourself first and foremost, then others will celebrate you, not because there is a trade-off for them or necessarily an expectation or requirement. So there's something about that freedom that comes with that. But it's a dual-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, you could look at it as freedom, but the casting out of it in and of itself can be pretty traumatic. So that's the channeling. And that was 32 minutes. And I'll put that in. The next portion was, I was instructed to pull from the parable of the sower. And here we go. And I'm here. Tuesday, December 22nd. The Garfields left for Oliver today. Phillida, Jay, and Joanne, an armored KSF truck, came from Oliver to collect them and their belongings. The adults of the community had all they could do to keep the little kids from climbing all over the truck and pestering the drivers to death. Most kids my brother's ages have never been close to a truck that runs. Some of the younger Moss kids have never seen a truck of any kind. The Moss kids weren't even allowed to visit the Yanni's house back when the Yanni's television still worked. And I'm told to stop there. There's something about what they just said, right? So these kids have never seen a truck of any kind. The Moss kids weren't even allowed to visit the Yanni's house back when the Yanni's television still worked. So these kids are, obviously there's this, the author wants us to know that these kids were not accustomed to seeing a truck. We're not accustomed to something like a television set. So there is this, again, maybe going back to the channel message of comparing the women who maybe are able to afford a retreat, a gap year, a sabbatical, right? And I'm hearing whether at college age and or even in 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, like a lot of these groups, right? if we're talking about gap year or sabbatical, using those two terms synonymously. That is not the reality for everybody. You know, some people can't even fathom such an idea, and not because just of the idea. You know, the one aspect is some didn't even think about it, right? Could have possibly, but didn't think of it as something, you know, kind of like most of us. You know, I remember growing up, I was never told I'm going to college. You know, college wasn't even something that was spoken about to me by my parents or family members. You know, I didn't begin to even think about college or look at something like college till high school, till I got with a guidance an advisor in high school, which would have been junior year. And for me, that kind of language or even the idea of me even thinking of going to something like that came from a nun, to be quite honest. May she rest in peace now, who, you know, went around in our neighborhood, you know, cared about young Puerto Rican children who were subjected to poverty and parents and households that were riddled and with addiction and abuse. But if it had not been for her, you know, high school was not even something in the books for most of the young kids in my neighborhood, right? Particularly coming straight out of the crack pandemic. So when you have those kind of, you know, I'm hearing starts, you know, something like a gap year or a sabbatical of any kind, it's just like, that's foreign language, right? That's like the Moss's truck that pulled up, right? Kids are all on it and around it and fascinated by it because they've never seen such a thing, you know. And to even go inside the house now and see a television set is an astonishment, even if it isn't turning on and working. But wow, that's what that looks like. So there's this spirit is making that there's this distinction, right? And again, not that one is better than the other or one is bad, right? I'm not saying now that every woman who, you know, or every person who does or who did grow up with, you know, familial support or you know, being told they were going to college, and even if they were going to be the first one in the family or whatever, you know, that's a bad thing either. You know, I don't believe that that's the basis for this message in any kind of way. It is just showing that there is, that both, you know, are true at the same time, maybe, right? I'm going to take an oracle card from the Shaman's Oracle now. So the Biblomancy was about maybe 5 to 6 minutes. And now we're going into the first oracle card. I'm going to timestamp all of this. That way people can just pick and choose what to go through. What oracle card would you like to come out now, Spirit? The Crow. The Crow, number 13, which is interesting because I'm hearing 4, right? 13, 1 and 3 adds up to 4. 4, stability, security, reduces down to 2, union, support, right? And I just heard, and the 2 shall become 1. So now not only did they add it to 4 for stability and security, reduce it down to 2 for union and support, they're even emphasizing that, and the 2 shall become 1, solidifying that support, the oneness of collaboration. And I am going to read it from the book. There must be a message, for it would not have come out if there wasn't a message for it. And it reads, Crow is the keeper of universal law, the law of truth. Crow teaches us to walk our talk, to find congruence between who we say we are and who we really know ourselves to be. This winged one insists that we speak truth, that we create truth instead of searching for it, and that we bring truth as to every situation we find ourselves in. When you speak the truth and practice truth, eventually everything you say becomes true. Your power to co-create with the truth is the universal law. Correct what is untrue in your life without judgment. Let the truth set you free. The medicine. Be true to your word. Crow arrives just as we have convinced ourselves that what we are doing is right and justified. And while this may be the case in the realm of relative truth, in the higher realm of absolute truth, it is not. Look deeply into your heart and remain alert, lest you convince yourself of something that isn't deeply true for you, or perhaps is not the highest truth. Do not seduce yourself with illusions. Very interesting. And I know more will be revealed as it comes, right? What type of illusions? I would love to ask Spirit, right? What illusion is Spirit referencing to, right? How are we not telling ourselves the truth? What are we not being truthful, not to ourselves and possibly to another about? You know, what are we not being realistic about, right? What is set up as an illusion? And I'm being told now to then go here. This is from the Sacred She Tarot. This deck is the Sacred She Tarot. Spirit, thank you. Give us some insight as to what truth the Crow wants to illuminate, right? What truth? Interesting. Look at what is at the bottom of the deck. I just saw it. The wise old owl. I just heard. Right. Another winged friend. What truth are you referencing, Crow? Right. What truth does the Crow want us to be aware of? What truth? Karma. Interesting. Karma. Now that's 14, which here would be temperance, right? Balance. So this isn't karma in the sense of, you reap what you sow. Or maybe there is a double meaning to it. I'm not sure. But it's more, it looks like karma as the yin and the yang, right? I did talk about that there's two sides, right? We were comparing and contrasting, juxtaposing these two opposite ends, right? Of women and their situations. I am being told to, because since karma is holding and it is a major arcana, I feel led to go to the actual rendering from the book. What to say about karma? When funky, it seems to arise from foolish unawareness that repeats the same old patterns. When good, it is taken as happy payoff for some good deed in the past. Survey yourself to understand what generates harmony and well-being, or discord and pain. What is missing? Perhaps it is your presence, full acceptance of your totality, whole and complete. Imagine that each of us is a unique melody, the sound of which resonates from whatever we think and do. Remember, every moment offers a choice of whether to venerate life or denigrate it. It is your choice. There is no doctrine, no right or wrong way to be other than to unconditionally hold what is. Remember in the channel message, it was talking about that, right? Are we seeking, yeah, my nose is itching, my ancestors are confirming this. Are we seeking external validation? Are we seeking success based on others' terms? You know, are we seeking, I don't know, I just heard again, is it, am I a trophy's wife? How do I see soft girl era? Or, think of karma as cause and effect, truth or consequences. Consciousness is as valid as unconsciousness. They are day and the night. They are the day and the night. There is no better or worse, only what is. Cruelty produces suffering that furthers cruelty. Kindness creates feel good vibes that spreads like ripples in a pond. Without evaluating yourself as bad or good, simply observe how your viewpoint determines your feelings and outlook. Freedom from the confines of your judgments opens the way for living wholeheartedly. Be the person who can change your world. There's no need for apologies or beliefs, right? And we were talking about that in between. We were talking about what was it in our channel message? It was endings as rite of passage, right? What are you choosing to end, right? What are you judging, right? Instead of looking at yourself as good or bad, or I love that. Be the person who can change your world. There is no need for apologies or even beliefs, right? So, and I'm thinking somebody else's beliefs, or feeling like you need to apologize. If you need to go, if something needs to end, if there's a relationship that needs to be let go, if there's a job, if there's an environment, right? You don't need to apologize for that, right? If you held a belief at one point and no longer held that belief, be truthful to yourself, right? Karma is about this real balancing, right? Of how did they say here? Of harmony. I like the way it said it back here. What generates harmony and well-being, or discord and pain, right? What, only you know that for yourself, right? A lot of us can get the Louis bags and the spa treatment and still feel discord and pain, right? As like, maybe that's why they brought up the reality shows and mentioned trophy wives, right? A lot of them would say, well, I have the house, I have the money, I have the cars, but I don't have him. I don't really have family. I don't really have relationship. I'm still, unhappy and filled with pain, right? So what does that look like for you, right? What does success mean to you? And it should be based on that, right? Not only about what, and I shouldn't say should be, I'm not here to tell anybody, but it says here, survey yourself to understand what generates harmony and well-being, or discord and pain. And then they writes it over here by saying cruelty produces suffering that furthers cruelty, and kindness creates feel-good vibes that spread like ripples in a pond, right? Who are you choosing to be? What life are you choosing to live, right? That is karma, right? Or the way this author would describe it. So again, there's something about, okay, I don't want to, where else do you want us to go, Spirit? So continue. Mother Nature. This is the Empress. Right? So and then joy. three major arcana. So we have the sun, and this is not, oh yeah, this is 21. No, 19, the sun. I was correct, right? The Empress and Temperance, right? So is this balancing that only could come from you? You know, yeah, I'm hearing you balance your internal world. You balance your external world. It is yours to balance. But if you allow the external validations or the internal turmoil to be the temperature, are you going to, is it harmony or discord and pain? Is it cruelty or kindness? You decide. That's, you're the author of that. Each of us are for, in our individual lives. The Empress. Again, what does that look like to you? Are you an empress if you're sitting on a lush couch, right? Or at a 5-star hotel and spa, eating at a 5-star Michelin restaurant? I don't know, taking flights, shopping, from morning to from dusk to dawn, I'm hearing? Or are you an empress if you're, somewhere in Rwanda or, I don't know, Merida, Mexico, or, I don't know, I just heard even North Philly. But you're comfortable. You get up in the morning and you don't feel the pressure of a specific job where you're being disrespected. You don't have much, but you enjoy specific, like I said, free classes at the Y, free library classes. You play double dutch with the neighborhood kids. You enjoy line dancing at the nursing home every Thursday night. You go to bingo, on Sundays. You hold, Sunday family dinners. You watch the I don't know, the Eagles game. You determine what that empress, and that empress is going to look different in different environments for different people in different ways. I just heard Mother Nature. And then I just love her earrings. They're like two big sunflowers. So I see Oshun. So first they mentioned Elegua at the crossroads, and now Oshun, another Yoruba Orisha, right? But she's known for her, so Elegua is known for at the crossroads, but also the road opener, right? And then Oshun is sweetness and honey, right? And beauty and kindness and sensuality, right? And femininity and feeling sexy and good about yourself, right? And that's not that, I heard the atypical Eurocentric figure of, what beauty dictates, right? Nor the goddess, right? It's not, Aphrodite or Venus. But it's you I'm hearing. That's what matters. It has to be uniquely you, whatever that entails for you. Right? So I'm hearing, you might not ride around in the latest sports car or, have the designer bag, but maybe you don't really care about that. Maybe you enjoy planting flowers in your garden, and that gave you peace and stability, right? One of the channel messages was saying a regulated nervous system. That it didn't want an unregulated nervous system, but maybe planting or jumping double dutch, or playing jacks or a hula hoop, or like I said, any of those classes, right? Or events at the local nursing home, at the local Y, right? That's invaluable because it's providing you ease and comfort and joy. A different kind of joy, right? I wrote some things down the channel today about the soft girl. What does it mean to be, to enjoy the soft girl era, right? Again, a lot of it now, when you hear it, it's been TikTokified or Instagramified. So soft life is not capitalism. It's soft life is not doing things to gain value, not being the workhorse or the mule, right? Just so that I can have those experiences, right? So I gotta work, 365 days out the year just to be able to afford a 2-week vacation where I'm spending, maybe up to $5,000, anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000 to enjoy for only 2 weeks out of that 365, to then do it all over again. So for 340 days, 35 days, crazy as a bat out of hell, risking all of my health, right? The mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, right? To then enjoy 2 weeks of these luxuries or whatever. Or I'm killing myself every 2 weeks so that I can have that designer bag or those red bottom shoes. Again, if that's really what makes you joyful, then no problem. But sometimes it's like some of the simpler things in life can bring joy as well, right? But again, knowing who you are, right? Okay, so soft life is boundaries, right? It's putting up boundaries. A lot of the times as women, we're saying, when people speak about us, particularly at our birthday parties and definitely at the eulogies, she was strong. She sacrificed for her family. She made sure all of us went to school. She made sure we all ate. Did anybody ever ask about her? Do we even really know her? All we know her as is like this workhorse, this mule. It sounds tiring. It sounds exhausting. It sounds very counterproductive to the self. Was she joyful? She or he? He was a good father. He worked 3 jobs. Did he enjoy life at all? And it's not saying that it's not all about enjoyment, right? That's why it's temperance, right? There's a balance, right? Can I enjoy life while simultaneously possibly working and saving? Can both be done together? Can both be true? So soft life is boundaries. Soft life is, what is a 10 out of 10 day for you? What is that? What does that look like? What does that smell like? What does that feel like? What would be your 10 out of, today was a 10 out of 10. I knocked that thing out the park today. I slept in. I took a nap in the afternoon. I took a stroll in the park. I took a dip in the pool. I went and sat with my best friend. I had lunch with, an old colleague, I don't know, what would be your 10 out of 10? Soft life is doing what makes sense for you. What are you good at? Right? Can you delegate to others? What is your intention? Why are you doing what you're doing? You know, that's soft life. How do you feel? Knowing how you feel. You know, you want people to just praise your title, your work, your strength, even if you're miserable. You divest yourself from others' perspective. Or are you able to ask, how do you feel today? And I wrote, always, always, always ask yourself how you feel. After each task, after each space you just was in, after each person you just interacted with, you should ask, how do I feel after those things? Right? We rarely ask ourselves, how do we feel, particularly as women of color. No one asks us. Not even our children, our spouses, if we have them. Our parental figures, our family support systems, if we have them. Then I wrote, judgment is repressed self-expression. I heard this other young lady say that. I think her name is Elle or something. But that was so beautiful. That usually I'm judging, right, someone about something, but it's 9 times out of 10 something I've repressed. Maybe I really want to do it, but I'm scared to do it. This one was a good one. Soft life is introspection. Soft life is a life of ease. Receiving as well as giving. Yeah, and then I just wrote what my 10 out of 10 day would be, but that's my business. Right? I just heard by Anita Baker, you give me joy. I just messed up the whole melody to that, but joy, what brings you joy? You know, what makes you feel like an empress? What brings you balance and harmony? And that is going to look very different for each of us at different times based on where we even at our stages and ages in our lives, right? None should be shamed. And it's not about comparing one to the other. There's a danger in there too, right? If I still have little ones, I shouldn't be comparing myself to someone who's retired or someone who's just entering or just exiting maybe high school or college, right? I mean, we're going to be all three here, like Mother, Maid, and Crow, are living in 3 different very realities of our time, of that specific time. Look at what's at the bottom of the deck. Balancing. Again, balancing, right? Be as light as the feather, right? Now I'm hearing, the Egyptian story, right? I'm gonna weigh your heart with the feather, The yin and yang, sun and moon, right? Masculine and feminine. How can I balance this, right? Look, union, right? And again, of course, I'm not against 2 people unifying, but it's the union of self. How can, again, right? Soft life is that. How can I unify myself within, right? The theme has been over and over again, Conspiracy, this radical self-inventory, right? This introspection, this know to thyself be true, And a lot of us, I know I'll admit, it's like struggling. I don't even know what I want. I don't even know who I am, because most of my life I was dictated who I was supposed to be, followed whether it was society's or family standard of what was supposed to be. And when you're doing that for so long, you lose sight of who you are. What foods do you really like? What do you really enjoy? Okay, they want a healing card. And then I guess we'll close out after this. Right? And I'm hearing, there is no solution. Again, there is no cookie cutter approach. There's no one specific solution that I can give to all of us that are under the sound of my voice to say. And it was 105.5, 5 now, 105.55. In the time when I looked over, right, it is change. There is this flux, right? We all are at different stages, but it's honoring each stage and even honoring each class, economic, social, right? I just heard stay in your lane, or not so much stay in it. I rebuke that. It's not about staying. It's understand your lane. And not to say that lane is your eternal lane, right? I mean, it has room for growth and change, and it's still 1555, right? Change. It's her, right? Oh, wow. Love. And I'll read that out the book. That came out the other day in another reading. And under it, take off your mask. And they're saying one more in threes. One more. Oh, is that it, Spirit? This one came up in another reading too. Say what you mean. Just repeating herself. Love, take off the mask, and say what you mean. Which would then go right back to the crow. That's what the crow said. Be truthful with yourself. Be truthful with others. And the more you speak your truth, the more it becomes a part of your life, I'm hearing, right? And they're saying, don't even need to go to the book. Love of thyself is imperative so that there can then be love of another. Right? They go hand in hand. You can't claim to love someone or to even receive love if you don't love yourself. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it is the truth. It's like there is this introspection that must be done. This acceptance of all aspects of ourselves. Take off the masks. The masks are not serving you anymore. Specifically where you're going. And I'm hearing they're no longer needed. It's exhausting. It's killing you. How you doing? Fine. How's it going? Blessed and highly favored. No. I'm here. Oh no. Oh, woe is me. I've become undone. Yeah, it's okay to become undone. It's okay to cry. It's okay to say I don't have it all together. Now, I admit, that based on the world that we live in, we do have to be more mindful of who we become that vulnerable with, right? But nevertheless, it's necessary. And then what I'm hearing is you'll find that there are more women and or men like you, or meaning not like you, but with similar fears, anxieties, doubts, questions, circumstances. You're not alone. And now this card looks different to me from yesterday. Before it was doesn't matter what it looked like yesterday. Here is, say what you mean, even if, you know, you don't want to hear it or the other person doesn't want to hear it. And if we're talking about our masculine, our feminine, right? There are things we're going to have to say to each other that, you know, or the aspects of ourselves that, again, we might not like, might feel triggering, but they're still necessary. Say what you mean. Don't hold it in. Yeah, don't repress. At the bottom of the deck, entrapment. Yeah, look, let me talk about trophy wives. Then they bring up like Esther and Eve and Rachel and Celie, right? And again, it's not just about the wife role. Again, to that job, to that community, to that family, to that society. Do not become entrapped to it. And you will stay entrapped if you don't love yourself, if you continue to. Because look, that sucker got on a mask all day too. And under it, victim consciousness. Right? It keeps you in the, I have no control. I'm a victim of this world, as opposed to I'm the author and the finisher of my world. I say who, I say when. I'm in control. I'm in charge. And under that, I saw procrastination, which is really fear. There's a quote, I wrote it down, I don't know where, but about procrastination being fear. Right? I don't know if I could find it really quickly, but that hit me like a ton of bricks, right? Procrastination being a form of fear. Yeah, it's okay. I brought out the meaning. That's what it was. And Spirit is saying, close with these little affirmation cards, you know, this was heavy, right? This is a lot, right? A lot to think about, right? The most important thing I'm hearing, it's not a lot to think about. The only thing Spirit is asking you to think about is you. Is you. And I get it. You know, the compassion is there, I'm hearing, right? Looking at the bottom of this deck, justice. It's your justice to see you, right? To think of you. It's not selfish and self-centered as a bad thing. It is a good thing to center on self, to be selfish, to be thinking of self. It is justice. It is your justice. Look at the card that fell out. I am flexible and and flowing. And it reads, I am open to the new and changing. This is how we take the old to the new, right? Every moment presents a wonderful new opportunity to become more of who I am. I flow with life easily and effortlessly. And I just heard somebody say it's easier said than that. Yes, it is scary. It's scary as fuck. But it is, yeah, it is possible. This one says, I am at peace with my age. Right? I was making that comparison to whether your mother, maiden, or crone, right? I am at peace with my age. Each age, I'm not making this up, has its own special joys and experiences. I am always the perfect age for where I am in life. Right? That's so beautiful. And that's not what this world teaches you, right? This world tells you be rigid, don't flow with life, right? Life has to be hard. Don't change, right? Change is bad. Remain the same, stick to the traditions, right? Oh, if you're too young, then you're dumb and naive. If you're too old, then you're old and useless, right? There's always some, stigma or stereotype of whatever age you are. I'm hearing unless you're a pervert. Not you meaning, but the person is a pervert and look, let me leave that alone. I release all criticism. I only give out that which I wish to receive in return. My love and acceptance of others is mirrored to me in every moment. Yes. Yes, my love and acceptance of others is mirrored to me in every moment. I release all criticism. And it's interesting, when I first read it, I'm thinking of like all self-criticism, but it's not just criticism of self, but criticism of others, all criticism. And if I'm judging someone, right, maybe it's a repressed emotion inside of me. But not only that, if I'm criticizing them, then I am opening them myself for that criticism to be then given to me, right? To be faced with that same criticism or similar criticism. And at the bottom of the deck, life supports me. Life created me to be fulfilled. I trust life, and life is always there at every turn. I am safe, right? That is one of like the biggest ones, right? Because we go back to the 3 plus the 1, the 4, the safety, the security, the union, right? Being unified, right? Not being pit against another. Yeah, beloved. That's the message. I hope this helped someone. I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I did the message. I got it as I was going. But just now I had one of those moments like, do I need to rewatch this myself to kind of like fully grasp this for myself? But that's just my side-ish. I pray that, it did help someone. It put some things into perspective. And, as always, I'm going to lovingly suggest, right? Just a suggestion that you be you on purpose. That you remember that you are unique, and as such, you are needed by this world of ours, because only you can bring what you bring. You are this beautiful, sacred consciousness that is a part of this collective consciousness. And we thank you for your role, right? Without mask. I see you. I hear you. And on that note, beloved, I hope wherever you are, you have a beautiful day or evening on purpose. Amen, Amen, and Ashe.